Hey guys, if you have been holding out on pre-ordering the Sonos Ray because you don't know much about it, today I am going to discover all the differences between the Sonos Ray, the Sonos Beam, and the Sonos Arc with whatever information is available to us at this particular point. So stay tuned. So in my usual fashion, I will give you an upfront summary of my video so that if you don't have the time, you don't have to stay around. But today I've decided to one-up it even further, and this is the entire chart summarizing all the differences between the Sonos Ray, the Sonos Beam Gen 2, and the Sonos Arc. So if you don't have time to stay around, you can just pause here, read all about it, and decide to come back to the video at a later time after you click buy on that pre-order. And if you are staying around, I'd like to go through each and every of this in much greater detail. So the main difference between the three Sonos soundbar, the Ray, the Beam, and the Arc is actually price. So the Sonos Ray is launching at $279 US, whereas the Sonos Beam Gen 2, which is Atmos capable, is launching for $449, and you can get the Sonos Arc, which is the almost 4 feet soundbar at $899. So there is a big price discrepancy between the three soundbars. So we like to go in a little bit, look at the details, and find out what you're actually getting for the money. So next up, we will be looking at the size. The Sonos Ray is a diminutive, very small soundbar that measures 2 inches below 2 feet at 56 centimeters, whereas the Sonos Beam is at 65 centimeters and it is 2 inches above 2 feet, whereas the Sonos Arc is coming in at close to 4 feet, 116 centimeters. Now, because this length indicates that there are differences in the driver configuration within the soundbars. Of course, you can get the soundbars in both black as illustrated here, or you can be in white, which I'm going to drop next. Now, the optical input of the Sonos Ray is what separates it from the rest, all right? Because the only input that you're going to get, a wired input to the Sonos Ray, is actually optical. There's no HDMI, whereas the Sonos Beam is capable of eARC and the Sonos Arc is capable of HDMI eARC inputs as well, which allows these two soundbars to accept Dolby Atmos signals, and the Sonos Ray is only capable of doing Dolby Digital 5.1 because that is a bandwidth limitation on the Sonos Ray. But you're still able to pair up with surround sound speakers as well as the sub like the Sonos Beam and the Sonos Arc. And next up, we'll be looking at driver configuration. The Sonos Ray has 4 drivers with 4 individual accompanying amps powering these 4 drivers. The Sonos Beam has 5 drivers with individual amps powering them as well. And same configuration, 1 amp to 1 driver for 11 drivers in the Sonos Arc. And what all this means is that there are different design principles behind the 3 soundbars that we are talking about. For the Sonos Ray, it is actually a ported design. Ported meaning to say they use air tubes, right, that runs from inside the speaker to outside of the speaker to equalize the sound pressure. And what that does is it is supposed to help engineer more bass out of the soundbar. And the Sonos Ray is actually a very small compact soundbar, so they have used ports to actually enhance the bass. I've recently reviewed the Symphonics picture frame, which is hanging on my wall now, probably a little bit out of sight. And if you are interested, do check out that video. It is using ported technology, or rather ported design principles, and it actually outputs a lot of bass. So if you are curious, as I am, on how the Sonos Ray performs in the bass department, do remember to stay tuned. The Sonos Beam, on the other hand, uses passive radiators. So passive radiators are, in effect, the speaker is a sealed design, so there is no airflow through any ports, any open ports. And what it does is that it allows a membrane to move to accommodate the change in pressure, and those passive radiators act as kind of like a speaker as well, but they're not powered. they still do throw out sounds as well. And lastly, for the Sonos Arc, it is a completely sealed design. There are no ports and there are no passive radiator. All 11 drivers are actually being powered by individual amps, throwing out sound in every single direction. So we're going to talk a little bit about the configuration of what all these drivers mean. Now, the next couple of slides, I'm going to be pulling in cutouts provided by Sonos to kind of like analyze a little bit about what you're getting for your money's worth within the soundbar itself. So first up, we have the Sonos Ray. Now, in this particular cutout, I'm going to circle out some of those things. So the first thing I'm going to circle out are the tweeters. So you look at these two green tweeters here, these two green circles, not green tweeters, what am I talking about? These two circles here, I'm circling out the tweeters. The tweeters are actually angled off at a certain angle, but it is actually pushed right in the middle of the soundbar. It is being guided by waveguides to throw the sound to the left and the right. So there aren't any side firing speakers. This soundbar itself fires everything in a forward direction, so you can put it in a very, very confined space like a cubbyhole under your TV console, and you'll still be able to hear great sound and separation from the sound. It also uses a phase array implementation so that you can distinguish the soundstage a little bit better. Now, the next in red circles, these are the two woofers, right? So these are mid-range woofers. Also, again, concentrated in the middle. So this is for a total of 4 drivers with 4 accompanying amps. Now, the next 2 circles, and these 2 in yellow, so these big ones here, and these are the ports itself. So these ports are actually curved like 180 degrees. Now, in speaker designs, when you design ports to help with bass, you want the port to be big, you want the port to be, well, not necessarily big, but it really depends on the tuning frequency you're aiming for. But in general, you want the port to be straight so that you don't get a restricted airflow and the speed of the air doesn't change. Otherwise, it gets a bit difficult to tune. So I'll be quite curious to hear how this 180 degree port sounds like. But I'm bearing in mind one thing. Do you know that the Sonos Sub is also a ported sub? Yes, there are 2 ports to the top and to the bottom of the Sonos Sub in the acoustic slot. So next up, we're going to be talking about Sonos Beam and the driver arrangement. Now, this is the Sonos Beam, and also I will be highlighting this green circle here. The green circle circles the tweeter. So there's only one tweeter in the whole of the Sonos Beam design, and it applies to both the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. Now, these 4 red circles here, they are highlighting the woofers. There are 2 in the middle, throwing sound forward, and there are 2 angled 45 degrees to either side of the soundbar, so you do need some side clearance. So if you're deciding which soundbar to buy, it really depends on whether you have walls or carpentry blocking your soundbar placement. If you have walls and carpentry, then you cannot use the Beam to full effect because it does try to throw the sound sideways. Now, I spoke about passive radiators. So these 2 yellow circles here circles the 2 passive radiators that are mounted to the front of the Sonos Beam. There's one more passive radiator which is mounted at the back, which I'm pointing out with the arrow. You can't see it in this particular picture here, but it is towards the back, slightly off center. Facing the Sonos Beam is to the right side of the back. So while there are 5 drivers and 5 individual amps, there are actually 3 more passive radiators in the Sonos Beam that will help out in the bass duties. So next up, we will be talking about the Sonos Arc. And the Sonos Arc has 11 drivers. Let's break down the drivers here. So first 3 in green circle, these are the tweeters. So there are tweeters in the middle and 1 each to each side. And these tweeters are angled aggressively to throw sound to the left and to the right. The next few circles, which, well, it's actually not few, there are 6 in total. So for each of these tweeters, there are 2 accompanying mid-range woofers. So you get a total of 3 plus 3 plus 3, and that is the total of 9. And 2 of these woofers at the sides, they are actually completely firing 90 degrees off to the side. So again, if you don't have the side clearance for this soundbar, if you are not mounting it on the wall or putting it on the TV console where it's open plan, then likely the sound is going to be get a little bit mixed and bounced if you are using the Sonos Arc in that particular situation. but I can guess that nobody will have a 114 centimeters cubbyhole that is like almost 4 feet cubbyhole. So if you get a Sonos Arc, the only good place to put it is on the TV console itself with nothing blocking to the side. And the other thing that you have to take note of is that the Sonos Ray fires only forward. The Sonos Beam fires forward and sideways. Even though it does support Atmos, it doesn't have top firing channels. This particular Sonos Arc, which I'm highlighting with the 2 yellow circles here, they are upward firing and it angles about 60 degrees from the horizontal plane. So it is a good upward angle. And these two are supposed to be firing your Atmos signal towards the ceiling, then it bounces back to you for the real true Atmos effect. So if you don't have the clearance below your TV, maybe about 4 inches at the minimum, preferably 6 inches, then this is another soundbar that you have to consider. Well, you have to not consider. Well, again, it really depends on you. If you're not particular about placement, then I guess you could use any of these. It's just that in the best possible scenario, you want to deploy this and get your money's worth by deploying them properly according to the speaker design. Okay, so that is all I have for you today. I hope this helps you land on a quick decision whether to buy and to pre-order the Sonos Ray or not, because if the Sonos Beam Gen 2 or if the Sonos Arc was any indication, anything that Sonos puts out today, you are likely to have to wait quite a bit. So pre-orders have already started. Some parts of the world are getting it in the later part of June. Some of you may be already getting your hands on it pretty soon if you have done the pre-order. So if you are interested in this soundbar and you've already made up your mind, do proceed to put in your order. Otherwise, you might end up waiting for months. Okay, and I will see you in my next video. I know in the previous video I said I'll be reviewing the Sonos Ray, but it is not time yet. I would think that the next video I make about Sonos is likely to be about the Sonos Ray. I have lined up a long list of tests to run with the Sonos Ray, and I'll be sharing them with you. So stay subscribed, and I'll see you very soon.